started. Thanks, and I look forward to talking with you again next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, Progressive Voices listeners. I'm Rebecca Vallis, host of Off Kilter, powered by the Center for...
You again next week. Thanks for tuning in.
This week, we sat down... Hey, Progressive Voices listeners. I'm Rebecca Vallis, host of In Progress, to learn what's in Trump's budget released this week. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Let's take a listen.
Usually you see these budgets from a new administration, and they're at least actually budgets. I mean, they're new, so they're not necessarily quite so detailed, but there's at least something that says, what's your plan for the tax code? What's your plan for Social Security and Medicare? They say nothing on these things. And it's just, a few things on discretionary programs and I mean, really frightening stuff. But, I mean, people have been calling it a skinny budget. It's more of a starvation budget, both because it's really, really skinny and also because it tries to starve people.
Quite literally.
Literally.
And we should start there. So it makes huge cuts to the U.S. Department of Agriculture and to a range of nutrition programs. Perhaps the one getting the most attention this week is Meals on Wheels.
Right. Meals on Wheels gets funding, and there's private money that funds Meals on Wheels, but a lot of people don't realize Meals on Wheels gets a lot of federal money. And this is not just a program, of course, that's about food. It's also for a lot of people that receive Meals on Wheels. This is like, if they're homebound, a really important way to just check on people and make sure that people are doing all right.
And companionship.
And what we're hearing out of the White House is there's no evidence that these programs are effective. Well, two things. First of all, they're wrong. There's great studies that these programs are effective across a whole range of health and well-being and economic outcomes. But second, I'm not entirely sure how the White House defines food as effective. There's hungry people, and they get fed, and they wouldn't necessarily get fed otherwise. So I don't know how Mick Mulvaney defines success at the dinner table, but when I eat and I was hungry before, I consider that a success.
So another program that maybe doesn't get a ton of attention, but I would really love to highlight, is something called LIHEAP, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. And that's kind of a mouthful, but what it really does is it helps low-income people afford heating oil and to pay their heating costs in the winter. I mean, that's the short version. So is it too much, Harry, to say that Trump's budget is literally leaving struggling families out in the cold? Out in the cold, or potentially out in the heat. When it's summer and people need air conditioning, and we see this, all over the country at times where there's heat waves, and I mean this is legitimately people die when there's a heat wave and they don't have air conditioning, particularly seniors.
Yeah, and this is something also that it's important across the country, but it's particularly important regionally in the Northeast and in the Midwest, and particularly in the Midwest. I mean, a lot of these are people that are communities that may have voted for Donald Trump, and a lot of them didn't too. But this is really walking away from a lot of the people who thought that Donald Trump was going to be different. Well, we should talk a little bit about that, because that's actually something that a lot of folks have looked into since the budget was released. And the consensus seems to be that the populations who are going to be hit the hardest by Trump's cuts are rural and small town counties, the counties that went overwhelmingly for Trump. And as you just pointed out, these are folks who were not voting for tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations. They were begging, please help improve my economic circumstances, bring back my job or save my job like you promised. But those are the communities that are going to be hardest hit. Trump even goes so far as to eliminate a program, really an entity called the Appalachian Regional Commission, whose entire job is economic development in that region.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the Appalachian Regional Commission, which of course was a community that supported him, a rural community with high levels of poverty. If you look at the Legal Services Corporation, which you know intimately, which we'll be talking about later in the episode. So for example, they fund representation for low-income people, whether it's domestic violence cases or housing cases. That's really important in rural areas where there's not as many lawyers that you can turn to. A lot of these programs are even more important in areas where there's not as many private sector services. And Trump eliminates the Legal Services Corporation altogether, eliminating all federal funding for the help that people need to get lawyers. I saw that apparently the way the White House Budget Office put this together
was they said, well, we listened to all of Trump's speeches and we put the budget together based on that. And, I don't know. That's an interesting way to put together a budget, but also I think a lot of people heard a very different set of Trump speeches than what apparently the White House Budget Office heard and what apparently Trump heard himself saying. People heard Trump saying that he was going to invest in infrastructure. Well, this budget makes huge cuts to infrastructure programs. People thought they heard Trump say that I care about child care. Well, this budget probably makes huge cuts to child care programs. People heard Trump say everybody's going to have health insurance. Well, we also see, I think this week, or maybe it was last week, the Congressional Budget Office comes out. Their health care bill takes health insurance away from 24 million people, and Trump's apparently fine with that. So I don't know what speeches Trump thought he was giving and what people at the budget office thought they were listening to. But I think a lot of those voters were listening to very different speeches from the president.
Thanks for listening. For more Off Kilter, find us on the Progressive Voices Network and as a podcast on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at Off Kilter Show and at facebook.com/OffKilterShow.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Is sort of what hasn't been proven here between whatever the Russians did and the Trump campaign. In fact, the former acting director of the CIA, who was Mike Morrell, who was a supporter of Hillary Clinton, he essentially reminded people, took Director Clapper at his word on this show, who said there has been no evidence that has been found of collusion. Are we at the point of, at what point do you start to wonder if there is a fire to all this smoke?
Well, first of all, I was surprised to see Director Clapper say that, because I don't think you can make that claim categorically as he did. I would characterize it this way at the outset of the investigation. There is circumstantial evidence of collusion. There is direct evidence, I think, of deception. And that's where we begin the investigation. Now, I don't want to prejudge where we ultimately end up. And of course, there's one thing to say there's evidence. There's another thing to say we can prove this or prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, or there's enough evidence to bring to a grand jury for purposes of criminal indictment. But there is certainly enough for us to conduct an investigation. The American people have a right to know, and in order to defend ourselves, we need to know whether the circumstantial evidence of collusion and direct evidence of deception is indicative of more.
Oh, I want to get to the...
Yes, and that's what today's hearings were supposed to get to the bottom of. My boyfriend, James Comey, showed up, and he sort of testified and sort of denied. I think I tweeted last night, how many times and how many ways do you think he'll say, I can't answer that, or this is an ongoing event. But we did get some stuff today. We did get some. And the stuff that we got was a confirmation, first of all, that there is indeed an FBI investigation ongoing into U.S. persons and the Trump campaign and Russia. We got that. That's what we got so far. And that it's very, very sensitive, and that it's been going on since July and August of this year. And that the reason why Comey didn't tell anybody about any of it until December, when outgoing President Barack Obama and incoming President Donald Trump were both briefed on the status of this investigation. The reason why he waited that long, he said, is because it was such, and it is, an uber sensitive investigation. Just like some of our friends in the intelligence community have shared with us, like Malcolm Nance, I said, why won't Comey tell the intelligence committees so they can do their work what is in the body of this investigation? And the answer from anybody who ever got near intelligence or actually worked deep inside intelligence is that what he's investigating is so super sensitive that he cannot and will not divulge anything about his investigation until he has enough to say, X or Y. And it wasn't until December that he had enough to say X or Y. And I think what happened in December was he saw General Michael Flynn being put in as the National Security Advisor, and Michael Flynn was under investigation. See. So here's what Comey said today regarding confirmation of an ongoing investigation into Donald Trump, his campaign, his aides, and Russia.
As you know, our practice is not to confirm
the
existence of ongoing investigations, especially those investigations that involve classified matters.
But
in unusual circumstances, where it is in the public interest, it may be appropriate to do so, as Justice Department policies recognize. This is one of those circumstances.
Yes.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Wow.
As with any counterintelligence investigation, this will also include an assessment of whether any crimes were committed. Because it is an open, ongoing investigation and is classified, I cannot say more about what we are doing and whose conduct we are examining. At the request of congressional leaders, we have taken the extraordinary step, in coordination with the Department of Justice, of briefing this Congress's leaders, including the leaders of this committee, in a classified setting in detail about the investigation. But I can't go into those details here. I know that is extremely frustrating to some folks, but it is the way it has to be, for reasons that I hope you and the American people can understand. The FBI is very careful in how we handle information about our cases and about the people we are investigating.
Wow. So there you have the beginning of the day. That was Comey's opening statement. And he did go, he's not there voluntarily, just so you know. He didn't want to do this. He was subpoenaed. And so, he was a reluctant witness. However, he did confirm for the entire United States this was not classified. This was an open session. This was the one that we had all been waiting for, knowing that it was coming on the 20th because he was subpoenaed to appear, along with Admiral Mike Rogers from the National Security Agency. The two of them testified that, yes, there are open investigations into U.S. persons having to do with the Trump campaign and its contacts with Russia. But they can't get into specifics, in an open session, and he knows we're frustrated, but one of these days we will know. Now, I just want to show you something before we get into the body of the story, because there sort of is a timeline now that we can follow, and there's sort of information about how deep this Russian involvement went, and that it involved not just hacking and not just using a cutout in order to leak the emails, why they did that, how this all happened, how Russia offered to do that, to whom did they make the offer. All that is now something that we can sort of know. But what really struck me at the beginning of this day was how absolutely ignorant and stupid Devin Nunes, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, is. And why do I bring this up? Just to rag on him? No. I bring this up because you're talking the National Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives. You're talking the chairman of the Intel Committee, who is supposed to be able to sort through intelligence and keep us safe. He was trying to talk about, the fact that he's taking this seriously, and it's, something everybody ought to pay attention to, but that Russians have always used propaganda. And I think he was trying to tell you about their old KGB newspaper, Pravda, but he called it Pravda.
I now will recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of an opening statement.
Oh, great.
The Putin regime has a long history of aggressive actions against other countries, including the outright invasion of two of its neighbors in recent years, as well as its brutal military action in Syria to defend the Assad regime. But its hostile acts take many forms aside from direct military assaults. For example, the Kremlin is waging an international disinformation campaign through the RT propaganda network, which traffics in anti-American conspiracy theories that rival the extravagant untruths of Soviet-era Pravda.
God help us all. Soviet-era Pravda. Everybody remembers Pravda, don't you? Yeah, it was a Soviet-era magazine. No, it was the state-run media. Pravda. Oh, my God. That's how the day started. I was like, oh, Jesus. Now we know why Devin Nunes was a member of the transition team on issues of intelligence, because they thought he is so stupid, he will never be able to process anything that happened in this campaign. Pravda? Really, Devin? Pravda. Just pointing that out. We are seriously, if you trust the Republican Party to keep you safe, might I point out September 11th, 2001, and that this guy thinks the Soviet-era newspaper was called Pravda. Okay.
Let me be clear.
Yes?
I've been saying this for several weeks. We
Have
know
you?
there was not a physical wiretap of Trump Tower.
Oh, good for you.
However, it's still possible that other surveillance activities were used against President Trump and his associates. Number 3, who has leaked classified information? Numerous current and former officials have leaked purportedly classified information in connection to these questions. We aim to determine who has leaked or facilitated leaks of classified information so that these individuals can be brought to justice. I hope that this committee's bipartisan investigation will result in a definitive report on the Russian actions taken during the election campaign.
So, right from the outset, you have a stupid person calling the Russian newspaper, the state paper, Pravda, and then saying, you know what, for me, this is about leaks. For me, this investigation is about who leaked. So we had 2 different investigations going on by the Intelligence Committee today. One, of course, into Pravda and leaks, and the other one into the FBI's and the National Security Advisor, the National Security Agency's ongoing investigation into U.S. persons who involve themselves with Russian oligarchs and Russian government officials in order to fix and rig the perception of democracy itself, the perception of Hillary Clinton, and the outcome of our election favoring Donald Trump. So we have 2 different investigations going on here today. You got the Nunes, portion of the government. They go, this is for me, this is about Pravda and a little bit of propaganda. And it's about, the leaker. I want to find the leaker. And for everybody else, except for Nunes, this was about figuring out what the hell went on in this country since July, having to do with the Russians meddling in our election. Now, I can pretty much tell you the big question that had to be put aside, which is such a stupid question. And the only reason why it was even raised is because the president cannot stop lying. Whether he lies at a microphone or he lies on his Twitter account, whatever. Oh, and by the way, Trump was tweeting while his own FBI director is testifying in front of the House Intelligence Committee. And the president is watching it on the TV as if he doesn't know what the testimony will be. And he's tweeting his reaction to this newly learned information that he's now getting from the National Security Agency and his own FBI director. That's insane. That means that Donald Trump never bothered to find out the content of this ongoing investigation. He just never asked anybody anything about the FISA warrant. He never asked if there was one. He never asked if it was against him. He never asked if there was, he just watches the TV and hears things. He just hears things and he reads things. And the things he reads are Breitbart. And the things he hears is Alex Jones' show and Sean Hannity's show and Mark Levin's show. I mean, we literally have a talk radio and talk television fanboy in the White House. We don't have somebody who's capable of governing or understanding complicated issues that are right down the hall from him. Meaning in offices of people that are running the Justice Department like Jeff Sessions, or previously his National Security Advisor, General Flynn. I mean, it's frightening. And then you have Nunes open the whole thing up going, the Russians have always been, propaganda meisters. I mean, remember Soviet-era Pravda. Holy crap, man. We have some of the dumbest people on that wall. And you know what I mean by on that wall. These are the people who are charged with protecting and defending us against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And they seem to be part of the enemy's domestic. They seem to be among us. And in control and in power. It is the most frightening thing ever.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Now that Trump's moved into the White House, I know. You could see he wasted no time. He went to work for his ultra-wealthy pals. He's making fundamental economic changes that are going to affect your money and your retirement. He's chipping away at banking regulations. You know he's going after Dodd-Frank, and that unwinds the fiduciary rule. That's a rule that keeps your money safe from deceptive financial practices. Like I said before, this administration is so awful. They are so greedy. And that's why now, more than ever, is the best time to diversify your retirement portfolio like I did. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Call my friends at ITM Trading. Get a free gold kit. Learn why gold survives every government, every currency, every economic crisis. Call ITM today at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped thousands of people just like me buy gold and silver coins and bars, and they can help you too. 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Call 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1854. That was the day that the founders of what became the Republican Party met in Ripon, Wisconsin. The idea was to form a new party, opposed to the Southern labor system based on slavery. That July, the Republicans held their first convention in Michigan. Their motto became free soil, free labor, free men. But as historian Eric Foner has explained, proclaiming the superiority of free labor was easy. Implementing that vision proved more troublesome. Women and free black residents living in the North often found it difficult, if not impossible, to find safe, good-paying jobs in the so-called free labor system. 2 years after the new party was founded, Republicans ran their first presidential candidate, John C. Fremont. Fremont was a military man, explorer, and mapmaker of the American West. He carried 11 northern states, but failed to win the presidency. The next election, Republicans nominated Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln won 18 northern states, and for the first time, a Republican sat in the White House. With the victory of a free labor candidate, the country stood on the brink of civil war. The question of slave labor would be settled on the battlefield. In his first address to Congress, President Lincoln declared, "Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could have never existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration." Given the thoughts of the first Republican president, could you imagine a leader in the Republican Party making such a statement today?
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
All right, here's Adam Schiff.
Director Comey, I want to begin by attempting to put to rest several claims made by the president about his predecessor, namely that President Obama wiretapped his phones. So that we can be precise, I want to refer you to exactly what the president said and ask you whether there is any truth to it. First, the president claimed, quote, "Terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism," unquote. Director Comey, was the president's statement that Obama had his wires tapped in Trump Tower a true statement?
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
We now have an FBI director who has to debunk presidential tweeting. And then he went further, and they asked him, could any president have ever ordered, a wiretap of any U.S. person?
President Obama could not unilaterally order a wiretap of anyone.
No president could.
There you have it. No president could. A president cannot order the wiretapping of any U.S. person. Period. End of story. Trump is delusional, and he keeps on doubling down on this thing. He keeps on saying, that if it wasn't Obama, then it was the British intelligence agency. The British did it. And, that was asked today, too. Did the British, tap, and then give information to the and the answer is no. No, it never happened.
Well, in my view, then, you would not be a great but a very unethical lawyer to make out such a case. And finally, the president made the following accusation: how low has President Obama gone to tap my phones during the very sacred election process? This is Nixon, Watergate, bad or sick guy. Director Comey, the president has compared Mr. Obama to Nixon and purported wiretap of Trump phones as another Watergate. What was the gravamen of the offense by Nixon and his operatives during Watergate? A lot of people who may be watching may be too young to understand what Watergate was about. What was the gravamen of that offense?
Well, as I recall it, and I was a kid, but have studied it quite a bit in school, the gravamen of it was an abuse of power, including break-ins, unlawful wiretaps, obstruction of justice, sort of the cycle of criminal conduct.
And it was a break-in of the Democratic headquarters by operatives of the president, was it not?
That's my understanding is that's how it began. The
and it also involved a cover-up by the president.
Yes, as I said.
Now here I think you've said there's been no evidence of an illegal wiretap by President Obama. Is that right?
I've said the FBI and the Department of Justice have no information to support those tweets.
But there is evidence, is there not, of a break-in of the Democratic headquarters by a foreign power using cyber means.
Yes, there was. As the intelligence community report, the unclassed report said in January, the Russian intelligence services hacked into a number of enterprises in the United States, including the Democratic National Committee.
And there was an effort by the Russians to cover up their break-in of the Democratic Party headquarters by using cutouts like WikiLeaks to publish the stolen material. Isn't that right?
Certainly to cover up that they were the ones releasing it.
Director Rogers, in an effort to explain why there was no evidence supporting the president's claim that Obama had wiretapped him, the president and his spokesman, Sean Spicer, have suggested that British intelligence, through its NSA or GCHQ, wiretapped Mr. Trump on President Obama's behalf. Did you ever request that your counterparts in GCHQ should wiretap Mr. Trump on behalf of President Obama?
No, sir, nor would I. That would be expressly against the construct of the Five Eyes Agreement that's been in place for decades.
And the Five Eyes are some of our closest intelligence partners, and Britain is one of them.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen any evidence that anyone else in the Obama administration made such a request?
No, sir, and again, my view is the same as Director Comey. I've seen nothing on the NSA side that we engaged in any such activity, nor that anyone ever asked us to engage in such activity.
And if you were to ask the British to spy on America, that would be a violation of U.S. law, would it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that didn't happen either. So Sean Spicer is also lying, and he's lying from the podium, and he's lying every single day to support the paranoid fantasies of one Donald Trump, who happens to be your president, my president. And, you've got this brain trust of Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and Carter Page and General Flynn and Jeff Sessions, all implicated in this Russia collusion or this Russian cooperation activity in order to denigrate the campaign of Hillary Clinton and subsequently, should she have won, her presidency. Russia despised Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton despised Vladimir Putin's kleptocracy and his oligarchy and his race to the bottom and his robbing of his people in order to enrich himself, and told the Russian people that when Vladimir was running for, re-election, she said, if I were a Russian person, I'd be out on the street protesting, and he never forgave her. And this was the reason why he inserted himself into it. And you know what? It's a lot more than you might think. Here is a girl, I've never even heard of her. She's from New York, a member of Congress. I think her name is Stefanki from New York. And she asked at the very end, they finally gave her a chance. Was it just, the tab? We know that they didn't involve themselves in the actual tabulation, the actual counting of the ballots, because it's so decentralized that they would have had to been involved in, at least 5 states. Each state, as you know, has its own manner in which they conduct a presidential election. But she asked a very big question. Are there other areas that were hacked besides for the DNC? And of course, I have told you this over and over again, that the GOP was hacked too. The creepy part is only the DNC stuff was ever released by WikiLeaks. But other GOP entities were indeed hacked, as were voter registration rolls in various states.
Why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership until recently, when the investigation had been open since July?
Okay, so she's going to ask 2 questions here. I should have broken them up into 2 pieces, but I didn't. She's going to ask, how, if you've been investigating this since July and August, why didn't you brief anybody until December? And he's going to say, because this is so uber sensitive. And she gets a little frustrated, but then she keeps on going, and then she's going to ask the question about what other entities were hacked, okay?
Why was the decision made not to brief senior congressional leadership until recently, when the investigation had been open since July, a very serious investigation? Why was that decision made to wait months?
I think because of the sensitivity of the matter.
Stepping back more broadly, in the case of Russia, we know that cyber hacking is just one tactic that's typically part of a broader influence or information warfare campaign. And we know the Russian government is ready and willing to employ hacking as but one of many tools in their toolkit to obtain information for use against the United States. Is there any evidence that Russia tried to hack other entities associated with the 2016 presidential campaign in addition to the DNC or Clinton campaign operatives?
Yes, many others.
Many others.
Can you specify those others? Did that include the RNC? Did that include any of the other campaigns of candidates in the primaries, either Democrats or Republicans?
I think what we can say in an unclassified setting is what we have in the report, that there were efforts to penetrate organizations associated with the Republican Party, and that, I guess what we said in the report, and that there were not releases of material hacked from any Republican-associated organizations.
So the Russians hacked both. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because only one side of their hacking was leaked, and that was the Democratic side. Now, what did they find out on the Republican side? Gee, I don't know. Maybe it's called compromat. Maybe they found out some stuff that they are blackmailing the current president and his administration with. And we don't know because they didn't give it to Guccifer 2.0 to leak to WikiLeaks. So either that or WikiLeaks made the choice. This we don't know yet. But what we do now know, and what I've said all along, is that the GOP was hacked as well. Many, many entities within our government concerning this election and how it was conducted were hacked. Details of that were hacked. Emails were hacked. Russians have that information from both sides of the aisle. but they only released one side, the Democratic side. Now, what they did with the Republican side is anybody's guess. I guess Comey knows, but I don't. But they asked him, well, why was only one side leaked?
And whether or not the IC was consistent in its view of those three assessments across the entire campaign. Can we walk through kind of the FBI's walk down that path? As of early December of 16, did the FBI assess that the active measures were to undermine, by the Russians were to undermine the faith in the U.S. democratic process? Did you come to that conclusion by early December?
I think that's right, December of last year.
16, yes, sir.
I think we were at that point, yes.
And then active measures conducted against Secretary Clinton to denigrate her, hurt her campaign, and also undermine her presidency.
Correct.
All right. And then the conclusion that active measures were taken specifically to help President Trump's campaign. You had that by early December, you already had that conclusion?
Correct. That they wanted to hurt our democracy, hurt her, help him. I think all three we were confident in at least as early as December.
Okay. The paragraph that's given me a little concern there in terms of just the timing of when all of that occurred, because I'm not sure if we went back and got that.
Oh, sorry, I should have edited it.
That's sort of the situation, the other way around, that when you can't comment on something.
I let it run too long. So anyway, yes, they know that only one side was dumped because the Russians preferred Donald Trump. They were trying to help Donald Trump, and they were trying to destroy Hillary Clinton's candidacy and, if she did get elected, subsequently her presidency. So we know that happened. Now, they asked today, the Congress members asked, what was the deal with some of these operatives? Like, what was the deal with Roger Stone? And what was the deal with Carter Page? And what was the deal? And why are all these people fired? I mean, they went through a list of like a rogues gallery of people that worked for Donald Trump and, why each and every one of them were fired.
On that last point, we've heard about quite a few individuals in the Trump orbit who fell somewhere on that spectrum from mere naivete, disturbing enough, if this naivete is a feature of those who are supposed to be running our country in foreign policy, to unwitting Russian dupes, willing blindness to active coordination. This rogues galleries includes those already fired: Roger Stone, advisor to Donald Trump, Paul Manafort, advisor to Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, national security advisor to Donald Trump, Carter Page, advisor to Donald Trump.
Oh, God.
But the cloud of deep suspicion and Russian entanglements extends to those still in power. Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State to Donald Trump. Michael Caputo, advisor to Donald Trump. Jeff Sessions, Attorney General for Donald Trump, and members of the Trump family itself. This matters. It's serious. Our battleships weren't sunk and our towers didn't collapse a la 2011. But make no mistake, 2016 is a year that we should mark on our calendars. And it's still going on. The attack didn't end on Election Day. And it will continue, as you have suggested, unless we, all of us in this room, stop it.
That's pretty scary, I got to say. I mean, he reads off a list of people that we've talked about many times, but this is a real hearing. This is the Intelligence Committee, and they talked about, and took testimony from Comey regarding Roger Stone, and he didn't want to talk about Roger Stone, which tells me Roger Stone is part of this ongoing investigation. They talked about Paul Manafort, and he didn't want to talk about Paul Manafort, although they asked questions about Paul Manafort, and they also submitted to Comey the fact that Paul Manafort did not, just like Flynn, did not ever register as a foreign agent while he was representing the pro-Russian government of Viktor Yanukovych, and that it is a felony to not register as a foreign agent if you are lobbying on behalf of a foreign government to our government and you are a U.S. citizen. Flynn was guilty of that. Then we found out not only was he doing it for Russia, but he was doing it for Turkey too, and then retroactively went ahead and registered as a foreign agent just last week. And I said to you that it felt to me like some sort of a plea deal had happened between Comey and Flynn, meaning Flynn was going to be charged with that felony, failing to register as a foreign agent while he was lobbying for Turkey in this case. And it felt like Flynn was saying to Comey, let me off of this charge, let me off of this felony, and I'll tell you everything I know that went on inside that campaign. And so they allowed him to, or he did, register retroactively back to the first days when he was lobbying for Putin and then subsequently Turkey. That felt like a plea deal to me. Now, Comey didn't want to talk about Manafort. He didn't want to talk about Flynn. He didn't want to talk about Carter Page. He didn't want to talk about Rex Tillerson. He didn't want to talk about Jeff Sessions or Caputo, which is so interesting because if they're not under investigation, then he can talk about them. Of course, he cautioned us all not to read anything into these tea leaves that he's leaving as a little path for me, little Gretel, to follow. Right up to the castle, the man in the high tower. Yeah, but it's just, it's an amazing thing. So, all right, let me take the break. We'll come back. I'm going to lay out what I think happened based on the circumstantial evidence so far submitted in this particular case of, he doesn't call it collusion, he calls it cooperation. It's interesting. It's, a term of art. But Comey is saying that there was some cooperation between the Trump people and Russia.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Buy a stinking podcast.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Hundreds of thousands of workers in the Food Chain Workers Alliance and SEIU's United Service Workers West will rise up in a general strike resistance action on May Day. May 1st is International Workers' Day. A statement on the United Service Workers West Facebook page made the call to join the Day Without the People general strike on May Day. In part, the statement said, quote, "The time has come, the time to fight the attacks on the freedom, dignity, and human rights that are corrupting our communities, our country, and our Constitution. It's time to stand up as a people against fascism and autocratic leadership. It's time to resist." End quote. SEIU United Service Workers West's David Huerta says that tens of thousands of his members will walk off their jobs. Workers everywhere are being urged to join the May Day strike. Hashtag May 1 Strike is an invitation from the Food Chain Workers Alliance and SEIU USWW to build the May Day general strike. 900 striking Rockford, Illinois public schools workers coming back to work Monday after a 3-day strike. AFSCME Council 31's Ed Sadlowski says the strike was legal and the workers had strong support from the Rockford Education Association.
We took a look at it and made a collective decision and said, hey, look, we're going to go out on our terms and we're going to go back in on our terms for now. And hopefully that would be enough to prompt some movement, some good faith movement by the employer. But that's yet to be seen. So on Monday, folks are going to return to their jobs in a legal fashion, and going to have a stronger union as a result of it. We'll deal with what comes next after Monday.
The workers went out on the limited strike to protest unfair labor practices by the Rockford Public Schools. The workers' wages are low, and they say the school district was not bargaining in good faith to reach a new labor contract. Disney must pay $3.8 million for violating minimum wage and overtime laws. The huge entertainment corporation that owns ABC News illegally charged employees too much for their work costumes while failing to pay legally required overtime. The U.S. Department of Labor says 16,000 Florida Disney workers will get back wages. The multi-billion-dollar Uber company has failed to overturn a Seattle ordinance giving Uber drivers the right to unionize. The Teamsters are mounting an effort to organize Uber drivers in Seattle. A Washington state judge ruled against Uber's effort to legally overturn the city ordinance. U.S. Chamber of Commerce has a separate suit against Seattle for giving Uber, Lyft, and other taxi drivers the right to form unions. Seattle's elected city council unanimously passed the union rights ordinance in 2015.
Sponsored by Iron Workers Impact, now reserving spots for this year's groundbreaking conference.
events, welcoming contractors to grow their business by networking and attending world-class breakouts. More on this event in San Diego, happening March 19th through the 22nd, is found online at impact-net.org under Events.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
We did it, you bastards! We're live! And it only took 2 years! Okay. All right. So we're back, we're live, and you're there, and we're here, and ain't that great? Now let me just tell you that if you want to listen whenever and wherever you'd like to listen, just go to randyrhodes.com, click on podcasts and swag, and get your podcast commercial-free, on demand, on any device. randyrhodes.com. Open all day, every day.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on randyrhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or progressivevoices.com now.
Do you know who Roger Stone is?
Generally, yes.
Are you aware that he was a partner of Paul Manafort?
You know, Mr. Schiff, I'm worried we're going to a place I don't want to go, which is commenting on any particular person. And so I don't think I should comment. I'm aware of public accounts, but I don't want to talk more than that.
Are you aware that he has publicly acknowledged having directly communicated with Gusev II, someone that the intelligence community has assessed was a persona of Russian intelligence?
I've read media accounts to that effect. I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling in the media. I don't know whether that's accurate or not.
If Mr. Stone acknowledged that Mr. Podesta's time in the barrel was coming in August of 2016, would that have been prior to the public release of stolen emails of Mr. Podesta's?
I believe that's correct chronology.
Do you know how Mr. Stone would have known that Mr. Podesta's emails were going to be released?
It's not something I can comment on.
No, he knows.
Do you know that Mr. Podesta has said that at the time he was not even aware of whether his emails had been stolen and would be published?
It's not something I can comment on.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to yield to Mr. Himes.
Damn it. Damn it. All right, so here's what it seems like happened, okay? It seems like back in July and August of last year. Now, Paul Manafort was still on the campaign. Remember, Paul Manafort leaves after the New York Times publishes an article saying that there was ledgers that had been left behind after Viktor Yanukovych fled to Russia to get out of Ukraine. And of course, Manafort represented the pro-Russian government and of Viktor Yanukovych and Viktor Yanukovych himself, and failed to register as a foreign lobbyist. And so Manafort was in trouble back then, not because the ledger, which was handwritten, said that $13 million was paid to Paul Manafort in some clandestine way, unless Comey and the NSA has figured out where the shell companies are that received this money on behalf of Manafort. Then, you know, we can't even go there because I've heard nothing to indicate that they've figured out that that money really did go to Manafort or didn't. So that's up in the air. But what isn't up in the air, and the thing that I always felt was the beginning of the investigatory process for the FBI, was the fact that Manafort was a foreign agent and failed to register as one. That brought down Flynn as well. That little fact, that was just a little fact that nobody talked about except for me. But I knew that that was true, and I knew that you needed to be registered as a foreign agent if he was representing Viktor Yanukovych. I had no idea that Flynn was lobbying for Turkey. But once Flynn registered retroactively, I went, oh my God, that's a plea deal. That is a plea deal to me. To me, this is, you know, like I always say, facts are facts, and then I opine, and this is my opinion. So here's what I think, my opinion of what happened. Back in July and August, when Manafort and Carter Page and Roger Stone and all these people were still involved in the Trump campaign prior to the Republican National Convention, when they didn't really know whether or not Trump was going to be the nominee, they were all acting like, I mean, he had this tiny little campaign full of like very strange people, each one of them with a connection to Russia. It was bizarre. each one of them had some very strange, un-American activity with Russia. And this is who Donald Trump was taking advice from, and this is who Donald Trump was putting in charge of his foreign policy shop, and this is who Donald Trump was, betting could get him the nomination. So in July and August, all these people are still with Trump. In July, Carter Page, who is, by Trump's own words, his foreign policy advisor, when Trump was asked, who do you have advising you on foreign policy back in July and August, he said he had a lot of people, a lot of really good, terrific people, really great people. And he said, Carter Page, PhD. That was his foreign policy advisor. Well, Carter Page in July took a little trip to Moscow. And it appears that that little trip to Moscow was approved by the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign knew he was going and told him, go ahead and go. Corey Lewandowski told him. And remember, Corey was still, dealing with, these kinds of questions. And they said, yeah, go ahead and go. So he went to Moscow. And that was apparently approved by a guy named J.D. Gordon, who was also advising the Trump campaign on matters like this. So J.D. Gordon says that Carter Page asked permission to go, and he gave him permission to go on behalf of the Trump campaign. Now, that's a problem. He then gives a speech at like the School of the New Economy or something like this in Russia, and he's uber critical of the United States. He trashes our democracy. He trashes everything about the United States. He trashes our system of government. He does everything he possibly can to endear himself to these Russian oligarchs. Now, he meets in Russia with this guy named Igor Sechin. Who is Igor Sechin? Igor Sechin is the CEO, the chairman of Rosneft, a Russian, a big giant Russian oil company. Igor Sechin is also former KGB. He is Russian intelligence. He is now, they call it FSB now, it's KGB. So Igor Sechin is a KGB agent, and he's also the CEO of Rosneft, because in Putin's Russia, every spy, every single oligarch that he trusts, every person that he gives all this business to, that he says, here, you could take this sector and you can have that sector and you could do the oil and gas and you could do, they're all ex-KGB friends of Putin. They're all people known to Putin, relied upon by Putin. So he gives this company to Igor Sechin, a former KGB officer. Carter Page meets with him. He wants to know what's in it for him, to be the sort of go-between between the Trump administration and the Russians, the Russian oligarchs. They say to Carter Page, look, we're about to take one of our companies private. Igor said, Rosneft is about to do a little privatization here, the biggest privatization of a company since the early 90s. This is huge. This is big. This is multi-billions of billions of dollars. What we're going to do is privatize about 19% of it. And what you can have are the brokerage fees for taking 19% of Rosneft private. We'll pay you as our broker in this transaction. So Carter Page apparently agrees that he will do this. Shortly after, Rosneft does privatize 19% of its company to unknown purchasers and unknown brokerage fees. Then, at that particular meeting, Russia says, oh, and by the way, Carter, we have all this opposition research on Hillary Clinton, and we can really help your guy become the next president of the United States. So we'll cut you in on the brokerage fees. And then, because they're cultivating him to be loyal to the Russian ideology here. And then they say, and we can help Trump in this way. We'll help you, and then we'll help Trump in this way. And so it seems as if Carter Page came back from his trip to Russia and said, they have all this stuff on Hillary, and they'll give it to you. But it looks like Manafort and maybe even Sessions and some other people around Trump realize they can't take it. They can't take it personally because if they do, there'll be fingerprints, Russian fingerprints that the opposition research done by the Trump campaign was given to them. And so they say, we need a cutout. We need another person in this chain of events. And so it becomes this guy, Guccifer 2.0. And Guccifer 2.0 becomes the go-between between the Russians and WikiLeaks. So they give all this opposition research, which includes Hillary's emails, to Guccifer, who then says he'll give it to WikiLeaks. He'll give it to Assange. At the Republican National Convention, who's there? Paul Manafort is there. Carter Page is there. And it turns out that Manafort himself handpicked Carter Page to go on this mission to Russia. Paul Manafort chose him. Also at the Republican National Convention is Ambassador Kislyak. Ambassador Kislyak meets at the Republican Convention with J.D. Gordon, the guy who approved Carter Page's trip to Russia in the first place. He also meets with Jeff Sessions at the Republican National Convention, but Jeff Sessions denies later that he met him there or that he had a private meeting with him in his office subsequently, but that did happen, and so now Sessions has to recuse himself. Before the convention, there is a meeting, a GOP platform meeting. And before the convention, the GOP platform is changed. The GOP platform is changed to deny Ukraine lethal defense weapons. Now, all of a sudden, J.D. Gordon starts talking to the press. And J.D. Gordon says, yes, I was at that meeting about changing the platform of the GOP. And you know what? I was against it. I was against changing of the platform. I didn't think it was a good idea. But J.D. Gordon, who was an advisor to Donald Trump at the time, said that Trump said at that meeting that he didn't want to go old World War III over Ukraine, and that Trump was involved in steering the language change. And J.D. Gordon reports later to CNN, quote, "This was the language Donald Trump himself wanted and advocated for back in March 2016. And this was Trump's idea to change the GOP platform because he was getting all this stuff from Russia, all this opposition research. And so in exchange, the quid pro quo was this. Guccifer 2.0 takes credit for getting the hacked DNC documents. And then these private companies that look at hacking and things like this, CrowdStrike and others, two other companies, they track back Guccifer's information to APT-28 and APT-29, which are Russian intel departments. They are part of the FSB, KGB. The United States intelligence community confirms in July that that is the case. In July, Trump goes in front of he does a press conference and he says this.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
That's July. It's a press conference. In August, Roger Stone confirms in his Twitter account that he is in touch with Guccifer 2.0. And he also subsequently tweets that he is in touch with WikiLeaks, that he's got a backdoor to both, and warns that Podesta's emails are coming next because we've already had drip, drip, drip from WikiLeaks. And he says the payload is coming. Roger Stone does. And then 2 days later, WikiLeaks releases all these Podesta emails. On election day, Donald Trump wins and subsequently appoints General Flynn his NSA advisor. General Flynn obviously had taken money from Russians to go to Russia and to sit next to Vladimir Putin and to, prop up RT as a legitimate television station, even though it's Pravda, everybody. It's Pravda. Michael Flynn then lies to Mike Pence, so Mike Pence says. Pence lies to the country, and Trump does nothing. He lets it lie. Finally, the press reports are so negative that Flynn is now fired. And then shortly after that, Jeff Sessions recuses himself from all things Russia. Carter Page denies that he did any of these things at the behest of the Trump campaign, and the Trump campaign then lies and says they don't know who Carter Page is. Which is fascinating because Trump himself names Carter Page as his foreign policy advisor on tape. So far you have Roger Stone tweeting that he knows when these leaks are coming, and they do come when he says they will. You have Manafort, who obviously picks Carter Page to go to Moscow and then resigns after the New York Times gets hip to his lobbying activities, and it becomes known that he's not registered as a foreign agent, and that's a felony, so he's gone. He's replaced by Kellyanne Conway, who lies every single time her mouth is open. Flynn is fired. Sessions has recused himself. But still, we have Rex Tillerson operating, the former ExxonMobil CEO, who's got a $500 billion oil and gas deal pending the lifting of the sanctions on Russia, acting as our Secretary of State, and Jeff Sessions is still in charge of the Justice Department, although he will not comment on anything to do with this investigation. What a freaking mess. What a mess. This is day 56, I think. 50 what? 6. What?
All things Randy
60.
at
Day 60.
randyrhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randy Rhodes Show.
The Randy Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
We want to be the car capital of the world again. We will be, and it won't be long, believe me.
Trump orders EPA to roll back fuel economy standards and plans to cut EPA's budget even more than previously known.
Researchers have confirmed that for the second year in a row, Australia's Great Barrier Reef has fallen victim to mass bleaching.
Large sections of the Great Barrier Reef have died thanks to global warming. Plus,
they began coming down from the mountains and now they aren't going back.
6 years after the Fukushima nuclear disaster, radioactive bores complicate residents' return.
All of those complications and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Let it be known, if you are driving a Prius and I support NPR bumper sticker is redundant, we know.
Yes, we know. Coexist. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we're learning more and more about Donald Trump's plans, hopes to slash the Environmental Protection Agency today.
Yes, we are. More on that in a moment, though. First, President Trump went to Michigan on Wednesday to announce he has ordered the EPA to begin the lengthy process of rolling back stringent fuel economy standards for cars and trucks sold in the United States.
Fantastic.
We're going to work on the CAFE standards so you can make cars in America again.
Of course, American automakers never stopped making cars in America, but those fuel standards were set to come into effect in 2022 and would have reduced carbon emissions and air pollution and saved consumers thousands of dollars at the gas pump.
By increasing mileage on those cars.
Indeed. Automakers had agreed to the higher CAFE standards in the auto industry bailout back in 2009, but last month they requested the Trump administration rewrite those standards, claiming they're too expensive. And now consumers are preferring SUVs because of low gas prices. Climate Progress reports that rescinding those higher fuel economy standards will cost consumers nearly $2,000 in additional net fuel costs, increase asthma rates, and ultimately will undermine the U.S. automakers' competitiveness as the rest of the world moves toward more efficient fuel economy standards.
Yeah, but on Fox News, they told viewers that these CAFE standards were terrible, were hurting the car industry. Of course, they were lying, but Donald Trump believes any lie he hears on Fox News.
In fact, Consumer Reports has found that 84% of Americans want automakers to continue improving fuel efficiency. Meanwhile, the Trump administration also plans even deeper cuts to the budget of the Environmental Protection Agency than previously thought just a few weeks ago. Instead of 25%, now it's 31%. For comparison, last year, congressional Republicans suggested the EPA's budget should be $8 billion. Then the Trump administration proposed a budget of $6 billion. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt then asked for $7 billion. The Trump White House responded by cutting EPA's budget further to $5.7 billion.
So they're not even giving Scott Pruitt, the new head of the EPA, who hates the EPA, they're not even giving him the money that he wants. They want to cut it more than him.
Exactly. Now, these are only proposals. The numbers could change when the budget goes to Congress.
Oh, it will. I know even Republicans are not happy about cutting the EPA that much.
More heat has been absorbed by the oceans over the last 50 years than has previously been reported. That's the conclusion of an international team of American and Chinese scientists in a new study that uses updated ocean temperature data and new analysis techniques to measure the heat content of the planet's oceans. The researchers say the oceans are warming 13% faster than previously believed, and that the ocean's heat uptake is accelerating. The ocean heat has been damaging coral reefs around the world, and now large sections of the Great Barrier Reef are confirmed dead. That's according to Australia's lead management agency for the reef. They warn that unless the ocean heat subsides, some areas of the reef may never recover. The central part of the world's largest reef is now showing signs of extensive bleaching due to record high ocean temperatures off the coast of Australia, as the ocean heat wave extends into a second consecutive year.
Good thing we're lowering the emissions standards on our cars here.
Finally, this week marks the 6th anniversary of the meltdown of the 3 nuclear reactors at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan after a record earthquake and tsunami in 2011. The plant still requires extraordinary daily efforts to keep the reactors cool, and officials are still struggling with storage and disposal of staggering amounts of radioactive water and waste. The cost of cleanup is now an estimated $188 billion, double previous estimates, and now efforts to allow residents to return to some of the towns within the exclusion zone have been hampered by herds of radioactive wild boars that have taken over the abandoned towns.
Wow. And I thought radioactive wild boars had taken over our country. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Well, I'm not uptight, not unattractive. Turn me on tonight, 'cause I'm a radioactive.
This has been the Green News Report on the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
I think my friends on the Republican side will get no argument from this side on the importance of investigating, prosecuting leaks. Leaks are a threat to our national security, whether they're perpetrated by Edward Snowden, whether they're perpetrated by people outside the White House, or perhaps, as we have seen in the last 60 days, maybe from people inside the White House. But, Mr. Comey, if I can use your phrase, intense public interest, there is intense public interest in the fact that our new president will attack anyone and everyone. He will attack the cast of Hamilton. He will attack Chuck Schumer. He will attack our allies, Mexico, Australia, Germany. He will attack the intelligence community which you lead, associating you with McCarthyism and with Nazism. But there's one person and one country which is immune, which is inoculated from any form of presidential attack, no matter what the behavior. No matter if there's a violation of the INF nuclear treaty, no matter if Vladimir Putin kills political opponents, the new president defends, obfuscates, does not attack. And the people around the president, Michael Flynn, Jeff Sessions, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, have an odd connection to Russia, a series of odd connections. We all campaign. I don't think any of our campaign people have connections with a foreign power, much less one that is an adversary of the United States. And further, apart from these weird links, without exception, the individuals I quoted have dissembled or misled, maybe even lied about the nature of those connections until the political pressure has gotten to a point where they have been fired or recused in the case of the Attorney General. So I want to look briefly at one of these individuals. And Director Comey, I understand your constraints, but let me ask a couple of questions regardless. Paul Manafort, who is Roger Stone's business partner and Trump's former campaign manager, I want to ask a few questions about him. First, Director Comey, can you tell me what the Foreign Agents Registration Act is?
Sure, not in an expert way, but it's a statute that requires people who are acting as agents of a non-U.S. government to register with the United States.
Right. So the National Security Division of the Department of Justice writes, this is their manual, the purpose of FARA, as it is known, is to ensure that the U.S. government and the people of the United States are informed of the source of information and the identity of persons attempting to influence U.S. public opinion, policy, and laws, unquote. Would you agree that guarding against foreign espionage or foreign influence measures falls under this heading?
Yes.
In general, is willful violation or failure to register pursuant to this law in some circumstances a crime?
I believe it is. I'm not an expert on FARA, but I believe it is.
And it could lead certainly to counterintelligence concerns, right?
Yes.
Now, Paul Manafort, as reported in the New York Times and other outlets, and his deputy Rick Gates ran a campaign in Washington to lobby government officials and push positive press coverage of pro-Russian Ukrainian officials. Paul Manafort began officially working for former Ukrainian President Yanukovych at least as far back as 2007, according to the Washington Post. The lobbying was only discovered by Ukraine's new National Anti-Corruption Bureau, which found secret ledgers in Kiev indicating almost $13 million in undisclosed cash payments from Ukrainian government coffers to Paul Manafort for lobbying done between 2007 and 2012 for Mr. Yanukovych. Director Comey, did Paul Manafort ever register as a foreign agent under FARA?
That's not something I can comment on.
Whether he registered or not is not something that you can comment on?
No.
Okay. Paul Manafort was, however, Donald Trump's campaign manager in July of 2016, correct?
Mr. Times, I really don't want to get into answering questions about any individual U.S. person. So
Okay.
It's obvious from the public record, but I don't want to start down the road of answering questions about somebody.
Okay, well, I think the facts would show that he never did register.
Bingo.
But as the ranking member pointed out, it perhaps should come as no surprise that the Republican platform, which was drafted at the Republican convention in July of 2016, underwent a pretty significant change with respect to the American response to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and their aggression in that country. It appears, from our standpoint, that we had perhaps somebody who should have registered under FARA pulling the strings there.
Yes, that is key. That is very important, that Paul Manafort never registered as a foreign agent, and he was a foreign agent lobbying for a foreign government. And when you are an American and you are lobbying for a foreign government, you are required to register yourself as a foreign agent. Now, he was Trump's campaign manager at this. I mean, it's mind-blowing. And what did Trump say about Crimea? The annexation of Crimea? Well, first he said he's not going to go into Crimea. He's not, and George Stephanopoulos said he's already there, isn't he? And then he said, well, they want to be part of Russia anyway.
People of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
All this is going on in the public view. And, you know, people they just couldn't figure out what any of this was. All right, so that's Manafort. Let's do a little timeline on Michael Flynn, okay? Michael Flynn here.
So on December 25th, 2016, Mr. Flynn reportedly exchanged text messages with the Russian ambassador. On December 28th, 2016, Mr. Flynn reportedly spoke on the phone with the Russian ambassador. By then, it was pretty clear that the Obama administration was going to take actions against Russia. On December 29th, 2016, Mr. Flynn reportedly spoke on the phone with the Russian ambassador again. That day, the Obama administration expelled 35 Russian operatives from the United States and announced new sanctions. We also know from press reportings that sometime in December, Mr. Flynn met in person with the Russian ambassador at Trump Tower, and that Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, was also there. The purpose of the meeting was to, quote, establish a line of communication, end quote, with the Kremlin. I should add that the White House and Mr. Flynn didn't disclose this December face-to-face meeting until this month. On January 12th, 2017, press reported that Mr. Flynn contacted the Russian ambassador again. And on January 15th, 2015, Vice President-elect Mike Pence stated on several Sunday morning shows regarding Mr. Flynn's conversation with the ambassador, quote, "What I can confirm, having spoken to him about it, is that those conversations that happened to occur around the time that the United States took action to expel diplomats had nothing whatsoever to do with those sanctions," right. End quote. On January 26th, the acting Attorney General Sally Yates reportedly told President Trump's White House counsel, who immediately told President Trump, that Mr. Flynn was vulnerable to Russian blackmail because of discrepancies between Vice President-elect Pence's public statement and Mr. Flynn's actual discussions. On February 10th, President Trump denied knowledge of this, telling reporters on Air Force One, quote, "I don't know about that," end quote, in response to questions about Mr. Flynn's conduct. The White House also publicly denied that Mr. Flynn and the Russian ambassador discussed sanctions. And of course, on February 13th, 2017, Mr. Flynn resigned as National Security Advisor. Now, Director Comey, all of these accounts are open source press reportings. Given Russians' long-standing desire to cultivate relations with influential U.S. persons, isn't the American public right to be concerned about Mr. Flynn's conduct, his failure to disclose that contact with the Russian ambassador, his attempts to cover it up, and what looks like the White House's attempts to sweep this under the rug? Don't we as the American people deserve the right to know? And shouldn't our FBI investigate such claims?
I can't comment. I understand people's curiosity about our work and intense interest in it, and as Mr. King said, oftentimes speculation about it, but we can't do it well or fairly to the people we investigate if we talk about it, so I can't comment.
All right, so he can't comment, but that was Flynn's timeline. Obviously, we have, the timeline of Paul Manafort, which doesn't look good either. Then you've got Sessions recusing himself, which, we already understand. You've got Carter Page being sent off to Russia. J.D. Gordon, who's an advisor to Trump at the time, in July and August, gives permission for Carter Page to go to Russia. Carter Page does go to Russia. He does trash talk the United States. He does come back, and he does tell them that, we've got opposition research on Hillary Clinton, but we can't take it because then there'll be Russian fingerprints on your campaign. So we need to go between the Russians offer Guccifer 2.0, who Roger Stone is tweeting to. He is actually tweeting to Guccifer 2.0, idiot. And he's also predicting that there's going to be a document dump in like a day and that Podesta's next in the barrel. And then as soon as he predicts, the next day things do happen that he predicted. I mean, he's like clairvoyant, this one. He's Sybil the soothsayer. Roger Stone is. One of the key questions, though, was by Congressman Grimes to James Comey, who asked him, you don't want to say the word collusion. You say cooperation with the Russia. So can you just tell us if you're investigating that? And Comey says, yeah, I am.
Ask you a question to try to clear up some confusion. This committee, of course, is engaged in an investigation about links, as you said, between the Trump campaign and the Russians, should there be any. Possible collusion. We've had a number of statements very early in the investigation that there was no evidence of collusion. This is still very early in our investigation. Is it fair to say that you're still relatively early in your investigation?
It's hard to say because I don't know how much longer it will take, but we've been doing this. This investigation began in late July.
Wow.
So for a counterintelligence investigation, that's a fairly short period of time.
So you use the word coordination, which to me suggests that you are, in fact, investigating whether there was coordination between U.S. persons and the Russians. Is it fair for me to assume that we shouldn't simply dismiss the possibility that there was coordination or collusion between the Russian efforts and U.S. persons as an investigatory body?
All I can tell you is what we're investigating, which includes whether there was any coordination between people associated with the Trump campaign and the Russians.
Okay, thank you.
There it is. Yes, I am. Yes, I am investigating cooperation between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Yes, I am. Now, this was at the end of the hearing this morning, which went on for like 4 or 5 hours. But they asked him a good question. I thought this was a really smart to do. They asked Admiral Rogers and they asked James Comey. And Admiral Rogers, of course, is the head of the NSA. And Comey, of course, the head of the FBI. And they asked him, why does this investigation matter? Why are we even doing this? And this was probably, if you hadn't listened to any of the other, and you can't follow the story because there's 7 or 8 people involved, and there's a lot of character development that has to go on in your head before you can write this play. Why it matters is really succinct here.
Again, in general terms, and not with respect to the specific investigation you have revealed here today. Not asking you to go into specifics on any individuals, but please explain briefly to me, and more importantly to the American public, why we should care about Russia's use of U.S. persons, of Americans, helping Russia destabilize our democracy.
Well, like Admiral Rogers, I truly believe we are a shining city on a hill, to quote a great American, and one of the things we radiate to the world is the importance of our wonderful, often messy, but free and fair democratic system and the elections that undergird it. And so when there's an effort by a foreign nation state to mess with that, to destroy that, to corrupt that, it's very, very serious, threatens what is America. And if any Americans are part of that effort, it's a very serious matter. And so you would expect the FBI to want to understand, is that so? And if so, who did what? But again, I want to be very careful that people don't overinterpret my words. To preserve our ability to answer those questions, we're not talking about our work. I'm not here voluntarily, right? I would rather not be talking about this at all, but we thought it was important to share at least that much with the committee and the American people, and now we're going to close our mouths and do our work to see if we can answer those questions, because the answers matter.
I don't think it's in the best interest of our nation for any external entity to attempt to manipulate outcomes, to shape choices. That should be the inherent role of a democracy. The investigation we're going through, I think, is a positive in the sense that it'll help illuminate to all of us, regardless of party, what are the implications here and what does it mean for us? Because I think our conclusion and that of the intelligence community broadly here is this, absent some change, this behavior is not likely to stop. Absent some change in the dynamic, this is not likely to be the last time we will be having these discussions about this kind of activity.
Oh my God.
And I don't think that's in anybody's best interest for us as a nation.
So there you have it. That was Admiral Rogers saying this is not going to stop unless we change the dynamic here somehow. I don't know what he was alluding to, but, you can draw your own conclusions. And, of course, Comey, why it matters. It matters because elections that undergird our democracy and a disruption of trust in our government is deadly to democracy. And you should care. You should really care that foreign governments are actively participating in shaping opinions about future presidents and Congress members and senators and where America needs to stand in the world. Foreign actors, absent a change in our dynamic, whatever that means, are going to act, and we will be talking about this well into the future unless something changes. Now that was chilling, I have to say. That was, and it was really smart to have asked why this matters.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Buy a stinking podcast. Hey, Trump is in the White House. Gold. Yes, gold. It really has the opportunity to do super well. That's definitely one good reason to own it. But did you know that there are a lot of benefits to owning gold? When you have gold in your physical possession, it provides safety. It's a hedge against inflation, U.S. dollar turmoil, and presidential instability. Gold has so much historical precedence as real money that the central banks that run the global financial system buy gold in staggering quantities year after year. Many financial service providers agree that gold is a great diversification tool for everyone's portfolio. If you want to learn more about the benefits of owning gold, just call my friends at ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Whether you want to own physical gold in your possession or put some in your IRA, call ITM today at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. ITM specializes in all types of gold and silver coins and bars. Call ITM Trading. Get your free gold kit at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. And here's an excerpt from my show, the It Sucks to Be Right Tara Buster.
Insurance companies, they don't provide health care. They're a racket. They need to get the hell out of our lives. We need to get rid of insurance companies for health insurance because we don't need them. If we really wanted to solve this problem, then we'd have single payer. But Republicans can't have that because having people divided serves so many of their sweet spots. They can't have us as a country thinking that we are in this together. That's why they hate Social Security, too. And this is why the problem with Obamacare is the reason they can even come for it is it doesn't include everybody. So the way that they're talking about kicking poor people off of their insurance, and that's true, but that's okay with Republicans. It's not an argument for them. They hate poor people. Their remedy for health care is don't be poor, you stupid poor. You're stupid enough to be poor? Go die. Go beg a billionaire. Maybe you'll make a GoFundMe page for your cancer. When you find out you have a lump, get a GoFundMe page going. And maybe somebody with a lot of followers will retweet it for you. Somebody like Mike Pence or Paul Ryan. That's compassionate conservatism.
This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com. That was a clip from my show, the It Sucks to Be Right Tara Buster, recorded live Saturday 6 p.m. Eastern at FYINation.com, replayed Sunday 7 p.m. Eastern on Progressive Voices, or anytime on demand on the Progressive Voices app. We stick together, we win.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandyRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
What I did not hear you say is whether or not there had been any attempts to hack into election systems of any kind.
Yeah. I can answer that because the FBI's responsibility is in the United States. We saw no indication of that. We saw efforts to penetrate voter registration databases, state boards of elections at that level. We saw no efforts aimed at the vote itself.
But you did see efforts to penetrate registration rolls?
Correct.
Did you see efforts to penetrate any other portions of election systems other than registrations? In this country, it's a highly decentralized system. And as a consequence, as you will recall, then Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson indicated that election systems should become a part of our critical infrastructure for cybersecurity purposes.
Their efforts were aimed at the voter registration systems in various states, and it takes different forms in various states. Sometimes there's a private vendor, sometimes it's state, but that's where it was focused and not on the vote itself, vote machines, vote tabulation, vote transmission that we've seen.
Thank you.
It was pretty thorough. It was pretty thorough, the Russian interference. It was pretty freaking everywhere. All right, to the phones. Will in Virginia. Hi, Will. No? No. Will? No. Cliff in Pompano.
May you live in interesting times, right?
No, yes. That is a Chinese curse, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to try to digest what just went down today with James Comey.
Yeah.
Now, I don't blame him for Hillary losing the election. I don't.
Okay.
He didn't help. But at this point, even if he's having all these investigations, is there any way that he could get Trump out of the White House by now?
Yes.
How?
Well, look, if we find out that Jeff Sessions and that Mike Pence and that President Trump were colluding or cooperating or allowing the Russians to meddle in our elections, then there will be a day of reckoning. And I don't know if he'll have the decency to resign. I don't know, if...
that's not going to happen.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I have absolutely no idea. It seems to me that Flynn has flipped. And I sort of noticed that when he registered, himself as a foreign agent last week. It dawned on me that it seemed as if he was asking Comey for some leeway in the felony that is failure to register as a foreign agent if you're representing another country. And of course he was. And so the idea that he went and retroactively registered himself seems like some sort of a pass that he got from Comey. Go ahead, register yourself now, and then cooperate with us, and we'll let you go. But that shows me that they're looking at these other U.S. persons, and by those other persons, I mean Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, Trump himself, Carter Page, Rex Tillerson, Jeff Sessions. I mean, J.D. Gordon. You know what I mean? It seems like there's this whole laundry list of people that are the Trump campaign.
If Director Comey had all this information about all this activity, why wait to end the investigation after the election already took place?
Well, like he said, he started in July and August, and he says that...
Right, which was quite a while ago.
I know, but he characterizes that as a short amount of time for a counterintelligence investigation. He says it's a very short amount of time between July and August and now to do this kind of a counterintelligence investigation. Look, I mean, this is probably the reason why he doesn't want to say anything. It's probably super sensitive, and it probably goes way deeper than, you and I could possibly imagine. And it has to do with everything from the National Security Agency to the Director of National Intelligence to, the prosecution of people acting as Russian agents within our own society and government. To prove something like that, is a very high hurdle. I mean, we've never seen anything like this before. People want to say there's nothing.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Did anybody pay for lying us into the Iraq War? Did anybody?
Well, no, because the idea that we went to Iraq with 72% of the public for it took away any opportunity to prosecute it in a court. Do you know what I mean? Because the thing that you would say in your defense is, but 72% of the American people wanted me to do this. And foreign policy is completely within my purview. I went to Congress. I asked for permission to use force. They gave me a use of force resolution. So what's prosecutable?
You're right.
See? So, but this is not that. This is something else. This is inviting a cyber war into our election process. This was actually an invitation to come into the United States. That's something else. That's treason. That's inviting foreign espionage. That's inviting.
But the difference is, President Trump, makes me almost want to gag.
I know.
He has the entire right-wing media system behind him. So he could easily maintain. I mean, I heard he dropped down to what? 45% today. Approval.
No, 37%.
37%.
He's below. This man is today is 2 months, and he's at 37% approval. That is unheard of. That is historical. That is.
Well, this is all right. This is all I want to say, Randy. There's no way that they're going to be able to get him out of the White House, no matter who colluded with the Russians.
I don't know.
I just don't see it. I mean, I've never seen anybody pay. I've never seen anybody pay for anything big like this.
I understand. I understand what you're saying, but I've never seen anything like this. That's the thing.
Neither have I. I don't think anybody has.
No, and so this is all new territory. I've never seen a president of the United States invite a foreign government that is an adversary of ours. Why are they an adversary? They have the world's. They have one of the world's biggest it is the biggest kleptocracy. Meaning the entire Russian government is a criminal enterprise. Okay, their people are killed if they write an article or if they suddenly they disappear. You have pop bands that are jailed for their opinion.
I remember growing up as a kid, we used to hide under our desk for the nuclear bomb.
But that was the old. I understand, but that was the old Soviet Union. But I'm talking about modern day Russia. Modern day Russia under Vladimir Putin is a kleptocracy. It is a thieving criminal enterprise. It rewards,
which kind of sounds like where we're at now.
And that's what's so scary is that it's more than a whiff, more than a hint. It's pretty obvious that Manafort made money lobbying over there for pro-Russian dictators. Roger Stone was in touch with pro-Russian hackers and leakers. Flynn lied about his connections with the Russians, to the vice president. And Carter Page went there on behest of the Trump administration to look around and see what opportunities there were to get opposition research on Hillary. The whole thing's a mess, but nobody's ever seen anything like this. This is not your typical corruption thing. This is something.
I'm going to bet you. I'll bet you $1.
Yeah.
That nothing is going to happen. That this whole
I'll bet you
conference today.
All right, I'll take the bet.
Nowhere.
All right, I'll take the bet.
I'm going to bet you $1, and I'll buy you. I'll buy you guys dinner up in Boca or something.
For $1?
For $1.
Where are you taking me?
I'm saying it.
Where are you taking me? All I can tell you is the food's not very good and the portions are too small.
Well, we got Bob's Best Burgers here in Pompano Beach, right around where Roger Stone almost got T-boned, or we got T-boned at.
All right.
In Pompano Beach, I'll take you guys there.
All right.
But all I want to say is
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but everybody's talking to me, and they're trying to talk to me in my ear, and I can't hear what they're saying. All right, so you're on. I'll take that bet. All right.
Got $1 says nothing comes with it.
Okay, Cliff.
Nothing comes with
All
it.
right.
And I love you.
Cliff. All right.
And rethink that shirt.
Okay, Cliff.
Rethink that shirt.
You don't like it?
No.
It's a ditzy.
It's too grandy for you.
Well, it's
too
called.
hip for that.
It's a ditzy floral print. It's supposed to be, like a retro.
Okay.
Ditzy
all right.
floral.
Well, I'll take your word for it.
So I look like a granny camp today. Well, hi everybody.
You and Janine.
Yeah, Janine Pirro. Me and Janine Pirro. She's got a better makeup artist than I do. Thank you. All right, I'll rethink the show. You know what? When I pulled it out of the closet today, I knew. I just knew somebody was going to say it wasn't good. I just knew it. All right, Rick in Los Angeles.
Hey, Randy.
Hey,
how's it going?
All right. You hate my shirt?
No, I like your shirt. Let's see here. No, that's cool.
I mean, it does have the granny ruffle,
cool.
but it's called a ditzy floral print, and I thought it was, a little cute.
Well, it's kind of like a little hippy-dippy. That's okay.
Yeah, a little bohemian, a little retro. I thought,
Yeah, no, that's cool. I like it.
I like it, too. I knew somebody was. I knew some people would not like it.
Well, you can't please everybody, right?
Right.
Yeah. This whole thing about Pravada, it reminds me of a movie, the Meryl Streep movie, The Devil Wears Pravada.
I mean, he was so stupid. And, I didn't even play half of his embarrassing moments, but Nunes was, saying stuff to them about, okay, so then this isn't true, and that's it. And they're going, no, we don't agree with you. We don't, no, we don't agree with it. I mean, everything Nunes said was was wrong. Everything he said was incorrect. And that's the one place that Comey and Rogers, stood out, was they told Nunes, they practically told him, why don't you just shut up and listen? Because you really don't know. I can't believe you're the head of the Intelligence Committee, because you don't know what you're talking about. It was painful.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to portray all these false equivalences, apparently.
People that make bad analogies. Yes. Yes.
And I mean, the guy's a dope.
He is a dope. He's a dupe, is what he is.
I mean, I've contrasted him with the minority member, Adam Schiff, who's my congressman, who I think is brilliant.
He is brilliant.
And
I'm very proud of Adam Schiff.
Yeah, no, he's done a great job.
Yeah, he has.
He's done a great job. I've always liked him. I mean, some people have called him milquetoast, but
You know what? But
moderates, I don't really agree with that. Really.
You know what you want? You want a big brain on this. You want somebody who isn't emotional about it, but who cares about his country so much that he's laser focused on what the hell happened and won't let it go. That's kind of what you want in a representative. You know, you don't want somebody who's a lackey of Donald Trump's, and that's what Nunes is.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with your last caller that nothing's going to happen as a result of the investigation.
I don't.
How do you define nothing happening? I think Manafort's going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
I think Flynn might, get probation based on cooperation. Who knows? I mean, but heads are going to roll here. I don't know that Trump.
I will tell you that one of the main things that led me to believe that Flynn was in a lot more trouble than people wanted to even wrap their brains around was that they took away his security clearance. When he was fired, they usually your security clearance goes with you, like a past president or Clapper. They all have their security clearances to this day. They're allowed to sit in on intelligence briefings if they choose to, but not Flynn. When they told Flynn to leave, when Donald Trump said he asked for his resignation, but he's a fine man, right? He's still vouching for him. They took away his security clearance, and that tells me that they had much more on Flynn than anybody in the Trump administration or Devin Nunes was going to tell you.
Yeah, and then when you retroactively register as a lobbyist, that you're acknowledging wrong by doing so.
Yeah.
Okay, you're acknowledging you broke the law in the past, but now you want like a pass.
Right.
And that tells me that there is some kind of a cooperation agreement in the works.
Yeah, it does me too. It really does me too. So I do think that there will be heads rolling. I do think there will be people that are perp walked. I do think, this isn't anything we've ever seen before. This doesn't have to do with banking and finance and algorithms and mysterious, AAA ratings for junk bonds and garbage. This is treason we're talking about, and espionage. This is really, really serious.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
I love jerky. It's big protein, big flavor, big packs, and very little carbs. My favorite snack is jerky, as you know, but you just can't get the best stuff at the gas station or the supermarket. No, you have to order it online from the best purveyors of jerky I have ever found, Herky Jerky. It is the official snack of the Randi Rhodes Air Force, and it comes in elk and buffalo, beef and bacon. Oh, yes, bacon. Hot, mild, 14 other incredible flavors. And now, for the month of March, all Randi listeners get a surprise sample pack of one of the items when you purchase 2 packs or more of anything. It could be elk. It could be the venison. You could try the buffalo. Anything. It's going to be a surprise. No promo code is needed, but to get the free sample pack, write in the comments section, buy a stinking podcast. Then they'll know that the order came from you, my listeners. That runs through the end of the month, so go ahead right now. Forget it. The bacon is unbelievable. You can put it on BLTs, use it in salads, or just munch right out of the bag. Go to herkyjerky.com and buy.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear on the Leslie Marshall Show weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Well, the Congressional Budget Office said yesterday that next year, 14 million fewer Americans will have insurance if the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as it's known, is repealed and replaced on the terms that the president is seeking. That tally would rise to 21 million in 2020, and by 2026, 24 million Americans will not have insurance. And for what? To give a gigantic tax cut to wealthy Americans. Now, according to the CBO, the loss of health care coverage under the Republican plan stems largely from gutting Medicaid for low-income Americans, even though Mr. Trump has said he would not cut Medicaid. Coverage would also be lost in part because insurance would become unaffordable for millions as subsidies are withdrawn. It's already been proven before the CBO report that the subsidies that you get are higher than the tax credit that you would get from the Trump care. Understand? So in other words, you're better off financially under Obama than you are under Trump with these two different plans. And that is not partisan politics. That is as plain as the eyes, nose, and mouth on my face. Now, Mr. Trump claimed the coverage would become much less expensive and much better. No. Remember what they keep saying? Access. You had access before the Affordable Care Act. You couldn't afford it. And that's what the Affordable Care Act was about. That's why it's called the Affordable Care Act. Making health insurance affordable for those that don't have employer-provided insurance, and for those that can't afford the premiums that are out there. And by the way, this benefits not only the rich, but who are rich? Those heading up those insurance companies that increase those premiums and did increase those premiums at a much higher and larger percentage than prior to the Obamacare legislation being passed. Who's going to get hit hardest? Older people. Yep, the Republican plan repeals the penalty for not buying insurance. And one predictable result of this change, premiums are going to rise because younger, healthier people will refuse to buy insurance. In other words, we're going to be back right where we were before the Affordable Care Act, but rich people are going to get some more money in their pocket to boot. So it's worse. Now, to hold on the cost of average premiums, the proposal would allow insurers to charge 5 times more. Are you hearing me? 5 times more for older enrollees than younger ones. In other words, you're going to be punished for being older because the older we get, the sicker we get. And that's just a fact. Our bodies break down. Physiologically, anatomically, you are dying from age 25 forward. So am I. It's not a pretty thing to think about. Sucks. We're all going to die. We don't want to think about it. We need to talk about it. Plan will provide a $600 billion tax cut over 10 years for the wealthy. What? Because they would no longer be subject to the taxes that pay for the health care subsidies. Hear the whole story on the Leslie Marshall Show, Monday to Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific on the Progressive Voices Network.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit randyrhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
What I would do would be, as an example, I own the Miss Universe. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. And we had a tremendous success. The show was live from Moscow, and we had a tremendous success there, and it was amazing. But to do well, you have to get the other side to respect you, and he does not respect our president, which is very sad. I never met Putin. I don't know who Putin is. He said one nice thing about me. I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today. I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. And I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. People of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
All right, Will in Virginia. Hi, Will.
How you doing today?
I'm all right. How you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm alive. I wasn't going to talk about the health care, but I'll worry about that later because it didn't matter. It doesn't matter who did the health care plan. If it's run by the government, it was going to destroy our country regardless. So, I mean, it doesn't matter who does it. Is it fair to say that all presidents lie?
They spin. I don't know that they lie.
Spin.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that's lying because I'll use Obama saying that you can keep your health care. You can't. So he might.
You can. You can't keep your health care, but you could.
It's going to be outrageously priced because they can put the number at wherever they want. They can put the number wherever they want because
not the government.
Have to have insurance.
Right, but that's not
the government mandates you to have insurance.
Right, but that's not the government. But
the government should not force you to have health insurance. So that's not what I want to talk about. Let's talk about the FBI.
Wait a second. No.
Right?
See, you do this all the time. You throw something out there.
I got a good point to you today. No.
All right, go ahead.
With your screen.
Go ahead. All I want to say on the healthcare is, all I want to say to you is, as long as there's a profit motive by an insurance company, then you're going to have outrageous prices. That's it.
Well, my wife's HR, so I'm going to.
What does that mean? She's not an insurance executive.
That's fair enough. But anyways,
right.
Quick point. 1996. Then President Clinton I love you too, buddy. President Clinton at the time had relations with China, and it's been proven, although they did give the money back, that it was Chinese contributions given to Bill Clinton. I will tell you that he did pay it all back. Whoever paid it back, I don't know. But this situation right here that's happening in 2016, it's just like 1996.
Well, no,
the
it's
same
not.
thing, but it's with China. No, it's with China
not the same
instead of
thing
Russia.
at all. This is espionage. This isn't. This isn't. This
Other
isn't.
countries
This
trying to
isn't.
have control over the president.
Right,
It's other
and-
countries trying to have control over the president.
No, not just over the president.
And just
over
like 1996, nothing's going to happen in 2016.
Really, did you think in 1996 that that China was this great country?
No, that's why.
Well,
why the
people
whole
in this
scandal with
country,
Zelensky happened.
people in this country think that Russia is fabulous. The people who voted for Trump don't think that Russia is our adversary. I don't think that that's what happened when foreign money made it into our presidential election and it had to be returned.
No, I mean it's the same thing as being.
Hey,
returned.
Will, you know what?
You give me a lot of money first. And
Would
then I'll give a return in favor.
Will, would you like a podcast?
I know you're going to give me a free one. I
Yes.
appreciate it, but I will probably take it because you're supporting and you're trying to grow your brand. So yeah, I mean I'll take
All right,
it.
all right.
I don't have nothing
Okay.
against you, but
Okay,
you are so in love with Democrats.
Okay, hold on. Get Will's email address so I can gift him a podcast. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, Dave in Denver.
Hi, Randy, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Hi.
Love. Thank you.
You hate my shirt?
Okay, so what's that?
Do you hate my shirt?
No, I love that shirt.
Oh, thank you.
It's retro hip.
Yeah, it's bohemian.
So all day I was listening, but sort of in and out because I was working.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed Gowdy and others, when they were questioning Comey, it seemed like it was assumed that Flynn was not under a FISA warrant. Has that been debunked? I mean, is that out there?
Say that again.
Did they say whether or not Flynn was under a FISA warrant?
No.
They didn't?
No.
Didn't it seem to you that...
What happened? I don't know. You just hung up on these two lines. Both of them. The guy I was talking to and the one next to him. You just hung up on him. And Will is still on hold. Dennis in Buffalo, New York. Oh, so let me answer the other guy's question. No, Comey would not discuss FISA warrants.
Yeah, Randy, I was wondering about Jeff Sessions. An attorney general has to have the same ethics clause as a judge. There can't even be the smallest smidge of impropriety.
That's not true.
Well, it says it in the Pennsylvania judge's manual when it comes to ethics. What are the rules of ethics that are binding to a U.S. attorney general when it comes to a foreign government?
It's whatever Congress says it is. It's whatever. I mean, you could have a scandal and still sit on the bench, and you can have a scandal and not still sit on the bench. Some people get impeached and some don't.
So where do we go for relief? Is the Supreme Court the final?
No, Congress.
Congress?
Yeah.
So Paul Ryan.
So the House of Representatives, it would impeach. Well, who are you trying to impeach, though?
Well, naturally, we know that everything had to go back to the president and his staff, all those who had contact with Russia. Who else were they doing it for? There had to be some kind of collusion going between Russia and Trump team, and it can't just be the team. I mean, that's big money to get on a plane and just fly over to Russia, And then he asked personally, if Russia is you listening, what about those 30,000 emails? That implicated himself.
Yes.
So we know something.
Just like Jeff Sessions implicated himself when he was sitting there, and Al Franken said, if you found out that, there was some involvement with Russian agents, what would you do? And Jeff Sessions voluntarily perjures himself and says, I never met with the Russians.
So is that enough? Or you're saying, does it go back to Congress? It's still up to Congress to get rid of them?
Yes, of course it's up to Congress. Who else would get rid of them? How else do you think it works?
Well, I was thinking that the Supreme Court on its own or by motion from a source. I don't care who the petitioner is. It could be it has to be somebody like the FBI or the NSA, and they say, well, we got a problem here, and we got a lot of actors involved, and this election is flawed, big time, and we got a foreign actor here, and they're all violating the rules of ethics. Or they're making up the ethics as they go along the line. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I'm saying from a lawyer's point of view, I know if you want to bring an action, a judge can bring on its own action.
No, a judge cannot bring his own action. You have to have a plaintiff. You have to have a plaintiff. And the Supreme Court would not decide whether or not Jeff Sessions can continue to serve. That would be the Congress. It would be the House of Representatives would impeach. That's an indictment. And then the Senate would hold a trial and either vote to remove him or not. So you have an indictment in the House and then you have a trial in the Senate. That's what happened to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was impeached in the House, and that's an indictment. And then there was a trial in the Senate, and they said, no, we're not removing him. So that's how it goes. That's who removes people. The Supreme Court has no role to play here.
Well, how come they challenged Obama on every move he made, and they took it to the Supreme Court?
Well, who is they?
The Senate or the Congress. They kept taking them, Bonner and all of them. They tried to attack the health care bill all along. Everything he passed, they took it to court.
Well, they
did. Why is the Democrats bending over for this dude?
Okay, because you don't understand how our government works. But there was a plaintiff in both those in all the cases. Any case that goes to the court has a plaintiff. It's not Congress members that go to the court. It's a plaintiff. It's a person who believes that they were harmed, and they go to the court. It's like David Bossie was the plaintiff in Citizens United. He brought the case, and the Supreme Court said, oh, you can give as much money as you want. Money is free speech, and you can speak as much as you want in this country. There's always a plaintiff. I think you need to, figure out like what part of government does what, because I don't think you understand it.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. Alice in California.
Hi.
Hi.
This is my observation of the brief amount of hearings that I witnessed, and that was that Trey Gowdy threatened FBI Director Comey about the release of information associated with the Washington Post. He wanted to know who were the 19 names, who were the 19 people that could be responsible for leaking this information, and wasn't that a crime? So I see this whole thing turning on a witch hunt.
Well, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if you were listening at the very beginning of the show, but we had two different things going on in the same hearing today. We had the Republicans who wanted a leak investigation, and we had the Democrats who wanted to know what James Comey was truly investigating. And James Comey said he was truly investigating cooperation between the Trump administration and the people, inside of it with Russia. Cooperation. That's what he's investigating.
Trey Gowdy seemed to say, if this wasn't something that had been brought to light, we wouldn't be here, and therefore this is a wrong thing. I thought it was a threat, especially when he indicated that the FBI was going to come back for another bill to reauthorize the NSA or something.
Yes. There's a section of there's I think what was it 720 or 702, and they were saying we're not going to reauthorize it if you don't stop the leaking, or we're not going to. And Comey said this has nothing to do with that section, absolutely nothing. So he tried, but they're not going to intimidate Comey. Period. It's not going to happen.
Well, I was pretty impressed with Comey, but I have to say that I'm looking at a news article from Reuters, and it says Russia sets up information warfare units. And I just can't believe that the Republicans don't recognize the influence of the Russian influence on this election. And
I
they're
think
trying
they
to turn
do.
the table on the
I think they absolutely do, and they're terrified because they said nothing, and they are all implicated because they said nothing. They not only did they say nothing about this Russia thing, they said nothing about the fact that he was playing the race card, and they said nothing about the birtherism. They said nothing about the Mexicans are rapists. They said nothing about the grabbing of women, and I could do whatever I want. And they said nothing. They allowed this on their watch to happen without comment from them. So now they're just playing CYA, and they're threatening, well, we won't reauthorize this, wiretap thing that you want. You know what? They're just trying to say, we have to protect ourselves now because we actually allowed a maniac to be the president.
Well, I couldn't agree more, but I just want to tell you in terms of herky jerky, I ordered the bacon, and I got the cheapest other second thing, which was the Smoky Mountain old-fashioned brisket beef jerky, and they sent me venison sticks for free.
Yes, they give you a little...
Buy a stinking podcast.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, if you order herky jerky and you write in the comments section, buy a stinking podcast, they'll send you some free stuff. So you could sample, is what they'll do. Really? That was... Dave, no, they never talked about the FISA.
They didn't.
No.
Didn't it seem like that was like assumed in all those questions? Did anybody ask about it?
Yes, they did, and he said that he would not confirm or deny.
Okay, all right. Those questions were driving me crazy today.
Why? I thought it was really straightforward.
No, it was good, but
Yeah.
I mean, like Gowdy specifically, like I said, I was in and out, but it just seemed like the assumption was we, did it like it was a mistake. Like Flynn's name shouldn't have been out there.
No.
And the whole time I'm thinking, what if there was a FISA warrant?
Well, no, he wouldn't talk about it. He said he doesn't mess with the FISA court either way. He said, I can't answer.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
On Thursday morning, the White House released the president's budget proposal, which calls for billions of dollars in cuts to the programs and agencies that help the most needy and vulnerable in the nation in order to add $54 billion to our already bloated military budget to build the wall that Mexico was allegedly paying for and to ramp up deportations. At the Thursday midday comedy break, more commonly known as the White House press briefing, Spicy handed things over to Budget Director Mick Mulvaney to let him try to explain the inexplicable.
First cut is the deepest. Baby, I know the first cut is the deepest.
Housing and Urban Development and the Community Development Block Grants support a variety of different programs, including Meals on Wheels. So what do you say to those Americans who are ultimately losing out?
Meals on Wheels is not a federal program. It's part of that CDBGs, the block grants that we give to the states. Have been many states make the decision to use that money on Meals on Wheels. We spent $150 billion on those programs since the 1970s. The CDBGs have been identified as programs since, I believe, the second Bush administration as ones that were just not showing any results. We can't do that anymore. We can't spend money on programs just because they sound good and great. Meals on Wheels sounds great. But to take the federal money and give it to the states and say, look, we want to give you money for programs that don't work. I can't defend that anymore. We're going to spend money. We're going to spend a lot of money, but we're not going to spend it on programs that cannot show that they actually deliver the promises that we've made to people.
Meals on Wheels feeds hungry senior citizens who often don't see another human being except for the volunteer who delivers said meals, who says it doesn't work.
After-school programs generally. They're supposed to be educational programs, right? And that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to help kids who don't get fed at home get fed so they do better in school. Guess what? There's no demonstrable evidence they're actually doing that. There's no demonstrable evidence they're actually helping results, helping kids do better in school, which is what, when we took your money from you to say, look, we're going to go spend it on an after-school program, the way we justified it was, these programs are going to help these kids do better in school and get better jobs. And we can't prove that that's happening.
The cuts to housing and urban development amount to 12% of their budget. The Department of State is second on the list of cuts, slated to have its funding slashed by 29%. Why?
It just so happens that much of the foreign aid that the president talked about in campaign, much of the money that goes to climate research, green energy, those types of things are actually in the State Department budget. So the answer to your question is that most of the cuts within the State Department try to focus directly on foreign aid. Regarding the question as to climate change, I think the president was fairly straightforward, is that we're not spending money on that anymore. We consider that to be a waste of your money to go out and do that. So that is a specific tie to his campaign.
Jim Acosta of CNN asked the question I've been thinking.
Describe this as a hard power budget, but is it also a hard-hearted budget?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I think it's probably one of the most compassionate things we can do to actually
You're help the elderly.
You're
and
only
kids.
focusing on half of the equation, right? You're focusing on recipients of the money. We're trying to focus on both the recipients of the money and the folks who give us the money in the first place. And I think it's fairly compassionate to go to them and say, look, we're not going to ask you for your hard-earned money anymore. Single mom of two in Detroit. Give us your money. We're not going to do that anymore unless we can guarantee. Please let me finish. Please let me finish. Unless we can guarantee to you that money is actually be used in a proper function. And I think that is about as compassionate as you can get.
They'll cut everything from Meals on Wheels to programs that give hungry kids the only hot meal they'll eat in a day because they want to guarantee the tax money we pay will be used in a proper function. They're cutting these programs to add $54 billion to the military budget so we can bomb the living shit out of people living on the other side of the world? In what reality is that a proper function? And finally, Irish Prime Minister Enda Kennedy was in Washington, D.C. on Thursday and delivered some pointed remarks, standing right next to President Trump.
It's fitting that we gather here each year to celebrate St. Patrick and his legacy. He, too, was an immigrant. And though he is, of course, the patron saint of Ireland for many people around the globe, he's also a symbol of, indeed, the patron of immigrants. Here in America, new great country, 35 million people claim Irish heritage, and the Irish have contributed to the economic, social, political and cultural life of this great country over the last 200 years. Ireland came to America because, deprived of liberty, deprived of opportunity, of safety, of even food itself, the Irish believed. And 4 decades before Lady Liberty lifted her lamp, we were the wretched refuse on the teeming shore. We believed in the shelter of America, in the compassion of America, in the opportunity of America. We came and we became Americans. We lived the words of John F. Kennedy long before he uttered them. We asked not what America could do for us, but what we could do for America, and we still do.
Let's see, 3 years, 10 months to go.
And that's today's dose of Nicole Sandler's What's News. Hear Nicole's show Tuesday through Friday from 3 to 4 Eastern at NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.